with another edification and some content. I want to thank all of my subscribers, especially the 132nd subscriber, as well as 131st and 130th and 129th. I want to give a special thanks to all of my subscribers. My channel is growing. I mistakenly claimed that in my previous video that I had 131 subscribers when I had 132 subscribers. So I want to wish all my subscribers high health and high spirits. And I wish that all my subscribers and your loved ones are safe and taking the proper precautions against the agendas that are waged against us behind enemy lines here in America, aka Babylon. Okay, in this video, I'm gonna do my best to display some etiquette without being inappropriate and flagged and things along that line. I want to start off with saying that the Western culture is trash. Okay, from the politics to the relationships and to the family structure, and the values of the West are lost, and that's what ultimately makes this Western society and Western culture trash. The Western culture is ungodly and it's unlawful. America is unlawful and ungodly. Okay, so I want to make sure that I make that clear. That's the premises of this edification. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm gonna touch on sex in the West and the dynamic between the gender war, right? That feminism pretty much started, right? When I first learned of or heard of feminism, at first I thought it was like a college where women go to learn how to conduct themselves lawfully in a relationship alongside a man, and I thought it taught women that their natural place is not superior over men. But when I really figured out and found out what feminism is, it's women usurping authority over the men, pretty much as the scripture states, right? This is where the women get their fuel to encompass a man, that are the I want to say the school of thought for feminism is supported with other groups of feminism based women, and of course it can bleed over into politics, sponsoring these lifestyles that these women decide to live as single mothers and all this kind of stuff like that. So I want to start with this Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie situation. Of course, Puffy is in jail, and I'm not going to go into the current status of Puffy. What I was touching on in this video is the sex and the check, the funds that were mentioned during the settlement of these allegations in this article. Because this is from 2023, okay? And last year, Cassie started off with accusing Puffy of RAPE, right? So when I came back to this article, I'm gonna just touch on a few things. So what I want to touch on is she's accusing him of RAPE, right? Now, Cassie was Puffy's girlfriend. So I'm gonna read this here. Rapper and music executive Sean Combs and singer Cassie have reached a settlement, right? In a lawsuit, Cassie filed accusing him of RAPE and abuse, right? And abuse, right? Now, I'm gonna slow down and I'm gonna just elaborate real quick, right? And again, I'm gonna say some things that that touch on the allegations of RAPE, right? What is RAPE, right? Now, RAPE cannot be simply based on a man's semen being discovered inside a woman's womb, right? Because if a man is in court being accused of RAPE, and if the courts ask him, "Is this your semen? Was your is it? Do you agree that this is your semen in this woman's womb that is accusing you of RAPE?" And the man can simply answer and say, "Yes, that is my semen," and it was consensual. That's why it's there. Okay. Now, semen being found in a womb is not simply RAPE. So, again, if someone has a key to your house, then why would they have to kick the door in, right? So, forced entry is what RAPE is based on, right? Unwanted entry, right? Not allowed, not wasn't invited. Okay, forced entry. Okay, now how do we prove that someone forced themselves through a door? It's based on the damage, right? Someone kicks the door in, you see visible damage, obvious damage to the structure of the door, right? Well, RAPE is based on the same uh, d- um, obvious signs. So they're going to move from the semen being found in the womb, right? And then they're going to go into the uh, the um, the injuries, right? Let's say there's a deceased woman, and then they discover semen in her. Well, the man that they're accusing of having his semen found in the woman's womb that is deceased, they're going to say, well, how did this woman end up deceased? And then the men will say, well, when I was with her, we engaged in sexual intercourse, and when I left her, she was alive. She was alive when I came to her, and she was alive when I left her. So then, in the case of RAPE, they're gonna they're gonna ask the male, well, what about these bruises, right? Bruises are similar to a door being kicked in and there's visible damage to the door, to the structure of the door. So someone has obviously forced themselves in, right? Now, they're going to say, well, what about the bruises that are found on this woman? Because that's going to ultimately prove, the bruises are going to ultimately prove the RAPE, right? So then the men can say, well, I don't know where she got those injuries from or those bruises from, or I don't know how this woman ended up deceased, but she was alive when I left her, or she wasn't bruised up when I was with her, or I didn't inflict any damage or injuries to her, on her, right? So this is what I was thinking about when I read this, because again, they're saying the abuse is what determines whether the entry into a woman's womb was forced, right? So they're going to try to tie the male to the bruises or the bodily injuries, right? This is where men can either be found guilty or not, because It's the bruises. It's the injuries. It's the deceased person, and then they're going to try to, say, well, the semen was there and blah 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 about the semen, but then the actual allegation is forced entry, right? Okay, so Cassie was Puffy's girlfriend, right? Okay, now, it says the announcement of a settlement comes just one day after Cassie, a singer and entertainer whose full name is Cassandra Ventura. Now, I'm going to refer to her as Cassie. Filed the suit against Combs, known as Diddy. The two had been romantic partners. Okay, she was his girlfriend, right? All right. Now, it goes here. I'm just going to skim through this so follow me real quick. It says, I have decided to resolve this matter amicably on terms that I have some level of control, Cassie said in a statement. She says, I want to thank my family, fans, and lawyers for their unwavering support. Now, she said she decided to resolve this matter amicably. All right. Now, we're moving on. We're moving on. Okay. Now it says in a federal lawsuit filed in New York City on Thursday, Cassie accused Combs of RAPing her, right? And physically abusing her because there's no such thing as RAPE without some form of abuse, right? Because that's the forced entry. Okay, so bear with me, all right? Including punching, beating, kicking, and stomping on her, right? That's when it's forced, right? Over the course of their relationship, right? Now, that's the abuse, okay? Now they're in a relationship, so let's stick with this relationship that Puffy and Cassie was in, okay? Now, Combs also said in a statement that they resolved the matter amicably, right? I wish Cassie and her family all the best love, he said in a statement. Now, when I first heard of this lawsuit, and then I heard they reached a settlement, that sent off a couple of red flags for me because anytime that I've came across a woman accusing a man of RAPE, the man usually ended up in prison or jail, right? And I'm saying the a real RAPE situation, right? The man always ended up doing some time, whether it was jail or in prison, right? Well, Puffy never went to jail, and that's what really like got my antennas attention because I'm thinking, why did he? How could he avoid being jailed if he was found guilty, right? Because here's his accusation. So settling out of court was what got my attention. So then Cassie, it says here, Cassie's lawyer said that Cassie was strong for going public with the lawsuit and she ought to be commended for doing so. Combs is one of the most recognizable names in hip hop. So the lawyer obviously was paid. Okay, the amount of the check, the amount of the settlement, right here it goes. Terms of the settlement were not disclosed, so there was no. We don't know what amount of money Combs Puffy gave Cassie to settle this lawsuit out of court. Okay, all right. So what I was thinking was all Cassie wanted was money for being RAP'd, right? I thought that was odd that she wanted money instead of seeing Puffy go to prison for the RAPE, right? So that's what I was thinking. I said, damn, if I just think about this, because this is what I'm concentrating on with this content. Okay, I'm going to touch on sex and prostitution, and of course, this is to underline the unlawful culture of the West and the ungodly culture and nature of the West, which is so-called white people, because this is their establishment right now. Right now, the so-called white race is in rulership, okay? And so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians, which are the Israelites of the Bible, are living the lifestyles of Gentiles. The so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians are finding themselves being deleted, finding themselves being jailed or imprisoned, finding themselves in communities where the backbone of the community is the women, not the men, when the Bible clearly says that the man is the head. So these unlawful family structures, these unlawful marriages, okay, these ungodly lifestyles that can be lived out in the West. So I'm gonna touch on lifestyles in this video, all right, and how unlawful and ungodly the Western culture is, and how ungodly and unlawful these lifestyles are in the West. Now, it says, when announcing the lawsuit, Cassie said she had stayed silent for years because she was with Puffy for 10 years. Finally ready to tell my story, she said, and to speak up on behalf of myself and for the benefit of other women, right? It's always this sisterhood who faces violence and abuse in their relationships. Okay? Any ungodly relationship is going to have some level of abuse. Okay? Verbal, mental, spiritual abuse, physical abuse. One or the other, or a combination of all of them, okay? But this is what these relationships get. This is violence and abuse is what these people get for being ungodly and unlawful, okay? These relationships are bound to fail. The vows that the universal contract of marriage states are not, there's no level of penalty if the marriage doesn't make it till death does them part. We're not talking about when someone deletes one another. We're talking about natural death. That's biblical. Biblical law states a woman cannot remarry because sex is marriage. She won't be held to that lawful bond with that man and be labeled an adulteress if she stays committed to her relationship until the man dies. And then she's free from the law of being labeled an adulteress. Okay? So the Western woman, she's constantly committing adultery. Most of the women in the West Black, Latino, Native Indian, and especially the heathens, but they're not required to be under the law. But the so called Black, Latino, Native Indian woman, they are. Most of these women from these Black, Latino, Native Indian races or tribes are unlawful and they're adulterous, okay, because they sleep with multiple men and they are constantly leaving their relationships and starting another relationship. It's like a resume where there's a lot of gaps in employment, but this woman has also quit every job she's had. She's quit every relationship she's had. She would be considered an adulteress, okay? Because she doesn't abide by the law that sex is marriage, and the man that she's currently or previously sleeping with must be deceased before she can move on, right? So a lot of these, the majority of these women, a large group of these women, which are the majority, are unlawful and ungodly, okay? So Cassie says she wants to, she glad she spoke up to benefit other women. All right, now it says that the lawsuit alleged Ventura was trapped by Combs in a cycle of abuse. Okay. It says Mr. Combs asserted complete control over Cassie's personal and professional life, thereby ensuring her inability to escape his hold. So obviously, Puffy was using his power and his influence and his physical force, allegedly, to hold her and control her in whatever way, right? Okay, now, if we go down here, let me see. Let's go down here. Hold up. It says here, Cassie tried to leave Combs for good in 2018. The lawsuit says, and Puffy forced himself into her apartment and RAP'd her, right? Now, see that forced entry? Forced himself. It's always forced because this is what defines being RAP'd, right? It says, shortly thereafter, he was able to take steps to completely separate. She was able to take steps to completely separate herself from Combs, including leaving the apartment. Now, the case has been settled, but this article continued to exploit these allegations in this lawsuit. Okay, now the lawsuit also included allegations Combs forced, again, this force, okay, force. They're making Puffy sound like he had a a leash, like he walked around in public with a leash. You know, like that movie with Jet Li, where looked like Danny DeVito, but it's not Danny DeVito. I forget the little short, little foreign Edomite had a chain or a leash on Jet Li's neck with a collar on it. And when he took the collar off, Jet Li was unstable and a damn maniac, kung fu artist, right? I think it's called Unleashed, I think. If anyone remembers that movie, put it in the comment section for me. But this article is making Puffy seem like he walked around with a leash on Cassie in public. You know? So it says the lawsuit also included allegations Combs forced Cassie to have sex with male sex workers while he watched and filmed the incidents, right? To have sex with male sex workers, sex workers. So when I thought about this, I said, okay, now it makes sense why in 2023 they're alleging that Puffy RAP'd her, Cassie. But then here we are in 2024 in September, and Puffy is jailed for sex trafficking. That was my that sent off a couple of red flags for me, because first of all, they settled out of court in 2023 and he cut her a check. The lawyer got paid, she got paid, right? Everybody got paid. Tyrese is going through something different, but something that shares some sort of similarities. His child's mother is an Edomite, so-called white woman, and she's asking for $73,000 a month in child support. Money. Tyrese makes great money, or he earns a lot of dollars, rather, because I don't believe that, I don't refer to dollar bills as money, so Salakia. But when it comes to these women in the West, it always boils down to currency, right? Tyrese makes enough income to where he should have full custody of his child anyway, right? I think his ex-wife makes about $106,000, $110,000 a month or a year, Salakia. And Tyrese makes about $275K a month. Kanye doesn't have full custody of his child. Look how much he earns. Right? We saw what Johnny Depp went through, right? With his divorce, right? But I'm looking at, in 2024, Puffy is being accused of trafficking sex, right? So the courts have to prove that Puffy is a pimp that's profiting off of trafficking women, right? So I wanted to touch on the culture of the West when it comes to sex, because let's go here. Let's go here to the definition. Let's go here to the definition of prostitution. Prostitution is legal in some counties in Nevada, but it is illegal in all other states and U.S. territories. Prostitution is illegal, right? in all other states and U.S. territories. So that's Puerto Rico, that's Hawaii, that's all the U.S., right? Meanwhile, the lifestyles of the Western woman, the culture of the Western woman, no matter the race, is based around prostitution. Now, I'm talking about the majority of the Western women, the majority. So if we're talking about 100 women, we're talking about maybe 15 of them are not exploiting themselves or trafficking themselves. All right? Who came up with dating, men or women? I would say women, because dating was pretty much a lifestyle that started after women liberated themselves from the gender role of being at home, being a wife, taking care of the household, being married to her husband, right? Seems like this whole dating thing came once America established themselves with restaurants, after the 50s. Maybe the so called white woman was doing it first, right? Because she had her freedoms first, right? Besides voting. But I'm talking about escaping the stronghold of the gender role that she was in. If you go back and look at some of those earlier commercials where the woman at home was thankful that the dishwasher was invented so she didn't have to bust suds all day, you know. If her husband earned a great income for the times back in the 50s or the 40s, then they would have a maid, you know. Before the income and hiring a maid was the thing, it was, of course, the so-called black, Latino, Native Indian slave was helping the slave master's wife take care of the household. So that made her gender role easier, right? Before the dishwasher was invented, you had the slave, the Negro woman slave, the Latino woman slave, or the Native Indian woman slave helping out in the household, right? So then this whole lifestyle of this liberated woman showed up, and she decided that dating was a good idea to meet men that the men were going to sponsor this lifestyle that she was making herself available for. All right? So I'm done talking about, I'm done with the article for now, the Puffy and Cassie, but I wanted to start off with that because ultimately in 2023, the settlement was based on money, and she was allegedly RAP'd. So I want to talk about this prostitution, sex worker, escort lifestyle in the West for a second. It says here in Nevada, prostitution is legal in 6 counties. In Nevada, including Elko, Leon, Nye, White Pine, Lander, and Stony. These counties have high brothels that operate in rural areas. Prostitution is illegal, kind of where Lamar Odom was at, the Bunny Ranch, right? Prostitution is illegal in most populated counties, including Clark, Las Vegas, and Washoe, which is Reno County, Reno County, Reno, Nevada, as well as capital Carson City, as well as the capital Carson City. All right, and that was funny when Lamar Odom got caught in the Bunny Ranch, um, drugged up, you know, drugged up off that cocaine and crack, over there spending about $5,000, you know, on just one woman. You go back and watch the interview of the Bunny Ranch owner when Lamar Odom was found in that Bunny Ranch. The reporter interviewed the Bunny Ranch owner, which is a Edomite, this white man, so-called white man, and Esau denied any type of allegation that Lamar Odom was doing drugs. He didn't want to lose Lamar as a client. You know, Lamar was one of his highest paying clients that show up and cut that money to be out there freaking off with those prostitutes, right? I thought that was funny. All right. So it says here, prostitution is illegal in all other states and U.S. territories. Many states have laws that criminalize prostitution. Soliciting prostitution. Now, this is funny. Soliciting prostitution. So that's the man soliciting a woman for paid sex. The man that's soliciting the prostitution would go to jail, right? Arranging for prostitution, arranging. That should include the woman as well, who's trafficking herself in a lifestyle of dating. It says here, and operating a house of prostitution. So there's no brothels that are allowed outside of these 8 counties in Nevada, right? This is why I encourage the men in the West, especially mainly, and only the so-called Black, Latino, Native Indian male, all right, to stop entertaining, because first of all, the Bible, the law, it's a commandment not to prostitute the daughters of Zion, the so-called Black, Latino, Native Indian women. So that's the law. And the men should keep all 613 laws to the best of their ability, right? While we're behind enemy lines here in America. Especially because the lifestyles of the majority, and I mean the majority, of the Western women, the lifestyles that these women decide to live, in my humble opinion, is low-class escorting and low-class prostitution. If we want to be technical, it's fornication. And it's unlawful and it's ungodly. Right? So I'm connecting these dots in my mind when I heard the Puffy allegations and how he reached a settlement. And then I'm also taking a look at the current state of family in the West, divorce, marriage, versus a covenant with a lawful woman in a godly marriage, right? Just think about this for a second. Dating is a lifestyle that women decide to live where the women do not sponsor this lifestyle that they decide to live. They're big on dating, but they're not big on being godly and lawful in marriage under a covenant. The Western woman, the majority of these women are unlawful. They don't believe that a covenant holds any weight because they really don't believe in God. They're really not godly women. To these women, when they say they're a woman of God, they could be strippers, right? Which to me only says that when I hear Western women say they believe in or they're a woman of God, they don't really understand the context of being a woman of God. Because there's no way that you can be a stripper as a woman of God. I think they're just saying they believe in God, but being a woman of God is not allowed to be a stripper, right? So, if prostitution is illegal in all 50 states or let's say all other states, so all 49 states outside of Nevada, if prostitution is illegal, right, then men have the ability to get a woman jailed during these dating lifestyles. So let's say a man is on a date and a woman writes on a napkin, "I'll have sex with you tonight if you blank. Pay for this food, just fill in the blank. Pay for this food. I'll have sex with you tonight if you show me a good time, sponsor this outing, take me here," That is that is an arrangement for prostitution. Let's go here. This is Cornell law. Prostitution involves engaging, agreeing, or offering to engage in sexual conduct with another person in return for a fee. In return for a fee. It is a crime throughout the United States, except in few rural counties in the state of Nevada, right? With that said, from what I've studied and from what I've gathered and from what I've noticed, women traffic their own sex outside of Nevada every day, day in, day out. They'll marry a man. The majority of these Western women, I'm talking about the majority, almost 100%, a strong 90-something percent of these women in the West, and I'm referring to especially the so-called white woman, because she's not required to be godly according to the laws of Yahweh. But the so-called black, Latino, Native Indian woman, among them, prostitution is high. amongst the majority of these women. It says prostitution involves engaging, agreeing, or offering to engage in sexual conduct with another person in return for a fee. The fee can be food, it can be an agreement based on food or an outing, showing her a good time. I mean, you got homeless people saying they'll work for food. They won't, I always laughed at that sign that they'll work for food, because why won't you work for gold? Why wouldn't you want to work for something that's going to get you out of the condition that you're in? You know? What about these women that traffic themselves in exchange for gifts and lifestyles? The Western woman constantly says that she's looking for a six-figure man. They'll marry a man based on his income. They say they'll be feminine if a man makes a certain amount of money. They'll be submissive and feminine if they meet a man. So let's say a woman is living this lifestyle of dating, and then she comes across a man that says he's an architect. She says, "What do you do for a living?" He says, "Well, I'm an architect." Or, "I'm a program analyst." He earns a lot of income, over six figures. She'll still say, "Oh, wow, I think I met my knight in shining armor." And I guess the dating lifestyle has paid off for her if this man that earns over six figures finds her attractive. So all of a sudden, in her eyes, he now has sex appeal, because men have to earn their sexual value. Women are born with their sexual value, right? So a man has sex appeal when he earns a certain amount of income that is above what these women claim is worth their time and worth their commitment. So what I'm saying is the Western women's culture and lifestyle and attitude is based on a man's wealth or a man's income. That's low-class escorting and low-class prostitution. A lot of these men lose their marriage if they don't earn the same high income that they had when they met the woman. How many divorces take place because the man doesn't earn the same amount of money? So to me, based on the definitions of prostitution, a lot of these men marry prostitutes because the women are only with the men because they earn a certain amount of income. These women will consider marriage with a man in the West based on his level of income. because to them, the women, his income equals a lifestyle, right? The vows in this universal contract that's BS says till death do you part, through sickness and through health, right? Through the thick and the thin. The thin is when everything is good. The thick is when things are not as good as they were at some point. So when a man loses his job in the West, he loses his family. The woman takes his children. The woman pretty much puts him on child support or whatever comes after that. But this consistent behavior of the women divorcing, it's a historical behavior too. You can, go back and study and dig up some of these relationships that ended and how the way it went traditionally is if the man lost his job, he don't know how to tell his wife he lost his job. The bills start getting behind, and then when she finds out that he lost his job because he been trying to keep it silent like it was a bad report card, a child trying to hide a bad report card from his parents, then she finds out he lost his job, and then she'll leave him and say, I'm going to my mother's house. And this is the traditional Western woman. And it started with the so-called white woman because she'll be the one, she was the one, and, still is, but I'm talking about from a so-called African-American position. I always saw the so-called white family traditionally ending when the man loses his job. The so-called white man feared telling his wife that he lost his job because he knows that she's going to leave him because he's not earning any income. I don't know why the man don't require her to work, but we're talking about the woman that lived at home or stayed at home and didn't work, I guess. But this modern day woman in the West, she fought for equal rights to work. So I don't know what man today doesn't want a woman to work unless he's a millionaire and he can afford to provide her with everything she needs. To me, that's a privileged position to be in, but I'm not striving for that position. I don't want to be the man that pays all these bills and all she has to do is do nothing. I don't need to be around. I don't need a woman not to do nothing. If I'm a billionaire, then she's going to be a millionaire because that's like Dr. Dre's wife. She was with him and she didn't establish a jewelry store. She didn't establish her own income. But then when she divorced him, look how much money she wanted. Look how much of his income she wanted. Salaki is not money, but look how much of his income she wanted when she divorced Dr. Dre. And I was thinking, you was married to a billionaire and you didn't establish your own income with a billionaire? That's a deadbeat. What a deadbeat woman. She's a bum. How are you a bum and you're married to a billionaire? If I'm married to a woman like that's a millionaire, or I'm going to have my own income. I'm going to open up a shoe store, shoe company, something. I'm going to establish some type of income. I'm not just going to be living off of this woman's millions and stuff. I'm going to establish my own wealth. That's why it don't make sense when these women want to marry a man based on his income and then she's a bum. She's living like a child. Just go back to when we were children and we didn't have to pay no bills, but our parents were responsible for all the bills. It felt like we didn't have no responsibilities because there was always, everything was being provided by the parents. So I don't want to feel like I'm a woman's parent. I don't want to feel like a woman is my child. Like Russell Simmons' daughter. That old goofy looking girl. So bony. Oh, bony, nobody having ass daughter of his was dealing with that older man in his 60s or 50s or something like that. And she was like, I think she was like 24, 26 or something like that, 28 or something. And then I watched a video of her hanging out with him. He was driving the vehicle and she asked him, can they pull over for some ice cream? And he's thinking some ice cream. And it's like you hanging out with you a grown man hanging out with a woman, a 20-something-year-old woman, and all she want to do is pull over. She had her shoes off in his car. She was sitting there like she was his daughter, asking, can they pull over for some ice cream? That has to be uncomfortable for an adult male to be around a woman, supposed to be a woman, acting like she's his daughter. I don't want to be around no woman that's acting like my daughter. I'm not trying to be a woman's daddy. Okay? That's nah, man. I don't need no woman that's acting like she's my daughter, acting like my child. You know? So men in the West find themselves sponsoring marriages and sponsoring lifestyles that women decide to live. And this is why I encourage men to save themselves from the Western woman and to avoid having children with her and avoid having sex with her and stop entertaining the lifestyles of these Western women. The lifestyles that these women decide to live, they can't even afford. They can barely afford to be independent, and they're not independent. They're just independent of the authority of a man, but they're not independent like they're flying their own flag. They're independent. They say that they claim to be independent. They use this independent word loosely and out of context because these women have jobs. They have to pay bills. And the majority of these women can't even keep up with their own bills. They're being evicted all the time. They get on the internet and cry and show emotions and be emotional online, trying to get some sympathy, support. So that's prostitution, right? What I'm saying is, they said they found some tapes of that Puffy was recording these freak-offs. So to me, if they're accusing him of trafficking, sex trafficking, then they have to prove that Puffy's a pimp. So if they're going to interview some of these people in these videos, Puffy said that he hired sex workers. And I'm thinking, where? His Miami mansion where they found all the baby oil and lube and stuff. It says here, right? No state in the United States have legalized escort services, but escorting is legal while prostitution is not. The primary legal difference between the two is that escorts can advertise their services openly and operate more freely than prostitutes. So it says no states in the United States have legalized escort services, right? Then it says, but escorting is legal while prostitution is not, right? So that's confusing. Escorting can be like calling this number and asking for a woman, like in Bad Boys, where Will Smith went to the gym to meet that so-called black woman, and he wanted her to hang out with the thieves and the drug dealers, or I think they were just thieves, right? And to just hang out with them and just let them know what she witnessed, right? But then she wound up getting deleted, and the so-called white woman witnessed it, and she was a witness to this murder, right? But those women were escorts, right? These women were escorts. You know, you call this escort service and you want a woman to hang out with you during the day, during the night, whatever. And you can pay these women for a girlfriend experience, right? You know, holding your hand, hanging on your arm, attending some commitment, or take things even further, and you can pay for a happy ending, right? Which will cost more, right? So escorting is another lifestyle that the Western woman finds herself living by choice, right? This is why I say that as a man in the West, dating is low-class escorting and prostitution. Because it's the man that is sponsoring the service, right? And men can admit to this. They just don't, I just don't hear, or I don't meet men that clearly understand participating in this lifestyle of dating is either referred to as prostitution or escorting. Most dating apps is nothing more than low budget escort sites. They just don't call themselves escorting because that's not what they're in the business of doing. But the women on these dating apps, you best believe they're trafficking themselves, or they're promoting themselves as escorts or prostitutes. The Western woman is unlawful, especially if she's religious. They're unlawful and ungodly. And men find themselves having either one of these women and he's catering and pandering to her, trying to win her over for a wife or a relationship, right? Men find themselves getting these women pregnant during the dating phase, having children with a woman that's only your friend. Because as a friendship in the West is another category that women decide to live. As long as the Western woman can meet men, they don't really have to commit to being married with these men. I see it take place in even the movies, right? For myself, every movie that was awesome was either starring a man or it was starring like the Avengers, where it's men and women, right? These male movies are amazing. Terminator. We had some of the greatest movies were involved men. Then Aliens came, which was awesome with the one so-called white woman, the Edomite woman, right? That was an amazing movie, you know. Eon Flux, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, You got your movies where you got these females, Rambo with the little Vietnamese woman with the little jade necklace. She was gorgeous, right? So you got these roles, but Woman King was trash, right? Written by a so-called white woman with all these bald-headed so-called Hamite women running around looking ungodly, looking like some damn, with the skulls of some damn pterodactyls and stuff. Look like some damn dinosaurs running around with spears, right? From Jurassic Park, the ones with the little arms running around, the little ball head. So what I noticed is when a movie dies off, it kind of dies off if there's no sequel to a great ending, or it dies off where they kill off the men and then the women show up, It's almost like a female Spider-Man, And then we no longer see these men in their roles, They did a lot of movies like that where the women kill off the men, or I just saw Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice ex-wife showed up, was trying to get rid of him. Lydia and her mother were together, but then her father, Lydia's father, he was deceased in the movie. He was no longer, and then her mother pretty much ended her life just to join her husband. I thought that was pretty. That was okay, but Black Panther, the second one, had pretty much a female ruling over men, right? As if there were no more men. Those movies are trash. Any movie where the men are killed off and then there's a woman propped up as a ruler or as an authoritative figure of some sort, some power where there's no men, then it's trash. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to point this out because the West is ungodly and unlawful. The so-called white race, so-called Asians, and so-called Africans are not required to keep the commandments of the Bible, right? That's why you hear a lot of these Western women say, well, there ain't no handbook to how to live life, and where's everybody getting that a woman needs to be modest and all of this? From the Bible. From the Bible. The Bible is your handbook. The Bible is the standard. So I practice my culture. I study my culture religiously because it's my heritage that was lost historically due to the rape, robbery, and colonialism of the so-called white race, which are the Edomites, right? When I say Western lifestyles, I'm referring to the so-called white rulership and their influence and their behaviors and their laws that support ungodliness. The laws of the land are not biblical, so the laws of the land are coming from the man of perdition. Him and his woman, okay? And the so-called Black, Latino, Native American women find themselves trying to mimic the behaviors and the lifestyles of the so-called white race. I don't see a lot of other cultures trying to be like so-called black women. I see so-called black women trying to be like other cultures the most. These women will follow the lead of some of the ratchet behavior of these unlawful women, but nobody wants to be like these unlawful women, these so-called Black, Latino, Native American women. As much as I hear so-called black women tell this same lie that other races of women want to be like them, no, they don't. No other race of women are calling themselves independent. You have feminism, which fights for the right to delete children and fight for the right to, empower themselves with being lesbians and stuff like that. But hey, I'd rather see these ungodly women marry each other than to destroy the family structure with men. Because a lot of men want to be fathers and desire to be husbands and stuff like that, and desire family, okay, on a consistent basis, like forever, okay? So, escorting, also known as dating. Men that can keep up with this lifestyle of escorting and dating and this low-class prostitution lifestyle that women traffic themselves in, these men are not accusing these women of prostitution because the men, they're finding themselves in the West thinking, this is the only way I can have sex, or this is the only way that I'm going to meet women, is to get on one of these dating apps or offer this woman food. I'm so sick and tired of men offering women food, offering women always want to feed this woman. As soon as you meet her, you're inviting her out on a dinner date. So a lot of the men in the West are entertaining this lifestyle that these women choose to live because in most cases, this is the only way to meet a woman. Unless you're going to farm the registered sex offenders list and start trying to entertain some of those women that were guilty of sex crimes. So over in the West, there's dating, and then there's the offering in exchange for commitment, right? Or just a experience, right? This is what men are left with over here in the West. And that's like a roll of the dice, that you don't meet a woman that's going to destroy the bond and, accuse you of abandoning your responsibilities if you have children with the woman. A simple date and sponsoring this lifestyle that a woman wants to live, you start off sponsoring it, because most of these women are not starting off sponsoring their own lifestyles. They're not about to gas up their car and come and pick you up as a man and sponsor this whole experience that they want to live out with you as a man. No, the men are the ones that the women are looking at, and they want the man to sponsor these lifestyles in order for her to show some sign of, or some level of interest. So that's why I say the Western culture is trash. If there's a few godly women that exist, which it is, then they're rare. But it's hard to identify them if they're standing too close to these ungodly women, or if they're hanging out with an ungodly crowd of or group of women, because there's a larger group of women that are ungodly. The smaller group of women are outnumbered by the majority of these women that are unlawful, ungodly, and that are the face of the so-called sisterhood that is fake and phony and don't even like each other. So men are outnumbered by women, and then the men are also outnumbered by the children of the women, because women have more children than the men in the West. So if there are a few good women, they're outnumbered by the majority of the women, because the majority of the women are unlawful and ungodly. You have a few good women are finding themselves as single mothers, even though they don't choose to be single mothers. And they're not understanding the nature of 2024, the nature of the modern day society. I can't be a father even though I want to be a father, and a woman ends up as a single mother even if she don't choose to be a single mother, and she gets support. Caseworkers at child support are nothing more but lawyers. They're lawyers. Child support agency is one place that lawyers can work, because they're typing up documents for court orders. So even if there's a woman that don't want to be a single mother, she's going to get support by the agencies to be one. She's going to be encouraged to be one, because she's not understanding that the black family, the so-called Israelite family, has been broken by the Western society and the agencies. Family court doesn't bring families together. It helps destroy families, right? So even the women that's not aware of all of the current nature of the West, I'm pretty sure it's like a reality check when they see how much support these agencies give to women that want to be single mothers. Nobody supports the nuclear so-called black family. I don't get support for wanting to be a father, but I get an unwavering support to not be a father. Nobody wants to see me with my children as a man, but another man that wants to be a father. There's no coalition that's fighting for the rights of men to be fathers, but there's there's a large amount of support that does not want to see us men be fathers. The women are included in that. Women don't want to see a man with his children and give him custody. Look at Tyrese. Look at the men who earn high incomes and look at the men who don't earn high incomes but can provide a child with a normal upbringing. The values of the children are the values of the Western culture. They're not the values of God. I'm talking about the God of Israel in the Bible, not these false deities and false gods like white Jesus and stuff like that. Okay. Jesus is not the creator. So I'm touching on this escorting and prostitution because the culture in the West, a lot of men need to save themselves, because I'm not going around saving all men, because this culture in the West belongs to white America. So I'm definitely not trying to save so-called white men and women from their own ways. Okay. But when I wanted to put this out here, this content out here, because Leviticus 19:29 says, "Do not prostitute thy daughter to cause her to be a whore, lest the land fall to whoredom," because the land will fall due to women, because there is no community. The standard of a race can only be as high, or the expectation of the women can only be as high, or the expectation of the race can only be as high as the women are living it, because the women are used as a tool to destroy the kingdoms and the nations of a race, right? So the women. And it says, unless the land fall to whoredom and the land become full of wickedness. And that's the Western culture. It's full of wickedness because of the women are being empowered to destroy the family. They're being incentivized because there's programs and agencies and .orgs. You go all over the internet, you see these women talking about, I'm doing this to benefit women and all of this to support other women. It's always about women. Women only support women. There's not a group of women that support men. The majority of the Western women don't listen to men. Men have no voice. That's why the so-called black community is the way it is, because children look up to their mothers. There are no men that are the heads of these women. The so-called black community consists of so-called black mothers and the so-called black church. The women listen to religion. All right? It's just like the Willie Lynch letter stated, that the women will raise the children according to the ways of the master. Every time we, as so-called black men, address the problem with the so-called black community, we're going to examine the religion and the woman and the households and the values of such. And every time the so-called black community gets offended and defensive, because so-called blacks don't know how to respond and don't know how to react. You have to teach so-called blacks and Latinos and Native Indians, especially the so-called blacks, financial literacy and how to respond and how to react. And every time they get defensive, because they don't want to be corrected. They say you can't judge me and stuff like that. And we can judge, okay? We can judge, all right? Let me get that. Let me get that. It's Proverbs 31:9. Every time the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians receive some type of correction from their own kind, first thing they say is, you can't judge me. Only God can judge me. And judge means correction. Judge means correction, okay? It says here, Proverbs 31:9, open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. Judge righteously, right? It says, who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. A righteous woman's value is above the value of rubies. Okay? An ungodly woman shall be counted as a dog, right? Which is a bitch. This is Proverbs 31:11. The heart of her husband doeth safely trust in her. Because a man can trust a godly woman. You can't trust these unlawful women. They will ruin you. They will attempt to ruin you. They will lie. They will make false allegations. There'll be a heartache and a headache. They'll keep your children from you. They'll put you on child support. They'll contract with the state against you. They'll have you fighting for your rights to be a father. And if you and if a man is not strong enough, he's going to be begging her like she's the gatekeeper. Please, baby, please. Let me see my son. Please, let me see my daughter. Where my children at? Please, baby. Come on, give me another chance. Right? It says, the heart of her husband doeth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. No need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. All the days of her life. So these women be like, oh, these men are too controlling. He tried to control me. He was trying to tell me what to do and tell me I couldn't do this and couldn't do that. He was putting boundaries on you. And a lot of these women in the West, they know that they don't deserve a good man because they don't follow instructions and they don't follow his leadership. Imagine if a woman was cooking in a restaurant and she didn't follow the instructions. Everything would be messed up and she'd get fired. And that's what men are in charge of. Men are the heads of the relationship and the heads of the households. And a lot of these Western men are afraid to be men. They're afraid to lose an ungodly and unlawful woman. I blame the men in the West. I blame white America for feminism and how these women keep other women under this false understanding and keep women in delusion. Women keep women in delusion because the moment a woman that's unlawful or ungodly comes across a good woman, she's going to destroy her spirit. She's going to encourage this woman to stay away from a man's correction. This is why our women in the West, the so-called Black, Latino, Native American women, constantly traffics themselves and exploits themselves. Women in the West traffic their own sex and they exploit themselves. Why do they do that? Because other women encourage this behavior and encourage this ungodly lifestyles that they choose to live. Men are not the ones promoting these behaviors. They don't listen to the men. They listen to other women, okay? I just had this conversation about how women don't listen to the men. They listen to other women. They don't listen to the men. This is why men can't get no correction out of these women because of other ungodly women. If a man is telling a woman and encouraging her to be ungodly, then he's a part of the problem as well, because he was probably raised by one of these women that were agents of feminism. A lot of these men that we call simps only deal with so-called black women that are unlawful because that's the only type of woman that they can get. Their mother was one, and that's the kind of women that they can get. They can't get another woman from another tribe, or they can't get a godly woman. I don't encourage our brothers to go outside their race and go outside their tribes and get them a so-called Asian woman or Chinese woman, a Moabite woman or Ammonite woman, especially not one of those Elamite women, them little Eastern Indian Kamala Harris red dot women, right? Because Kamala Harris is one of those women. She's a Eastern Indian. Okay, so let's go here. Proverbs 31 and 12. She will do him good and not evil in all the days of her life. She seeketh, this is 13. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. See, wool and flax, which is material. She's going to make clothes. How many men find women that know how to operate a sewing machine? Only thing these women know how to do is make reservations in the West. And I'm talking about the majority. I can't stand when I'm making remarks about the majority of women and the few women try to defend the majority of these women when the majority of the women don't like the minority of the women. The majority of the women, the ungodly, unlawful women, don't like these few women that try to strive to be a godly woman so that she can be a godly wife. So like I said, the good women, the few good women are outnumbered by the majority of the women. And the few good men are outnumbered by the children of women, and also outnumbered by the women and the agencies and white supremacy. So the solution for myself, from what I'm paying attention to and from what I'm studying, is the few good men need to keep the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh, Yahweh Shai. And the Bible also says that 7 women shall grab hold of one man. So these few good women need to find themselves a good man and start a new nation, which is going to be the kingdom of heaven. This is where those women are going to come from, and this is going to be their purpose. The few good women that find themselves in the presence of an agent of destruction that destroys the so-called black, Latino, Native American family, she's going to be like shocked to realize this is why, and the so-called black, Latino, Native American family don't exist, because of these agencies and these agents of destruction. These few good women better realize that the so-called black man has been saying this for over 60 years, how the so-called black woman needs to be reprogrammed because the so-called black family was destroyed by white supremacy and so-called black agents who joined hand in hand with the enemy, being the males and the women. But the women were the tools that the devil, which is the so-called white man, the deceiver, uses to destroy the black family. Nobody incentivizes men to destroy black families, the so-called Black, Latino, Native American woman was incentivized to walk away from her role in the so-called black family, right? So this is Proverbs 31:14. She is like a merchant's ship. She bringeth her food from afar. That's like a lioness. A good woman will bring her income to her husband. A good woman will bring material and food to her husband, to her family. She's not going to look at a man's income and expect him to provide everything with his income, and his income is her income and her income is her income. No. Go look at the Discovery Channel and look how those lionesses will kill an animal and drag that animal back to the male lion, because they need him to be strong so he can defend the territory and defend the family, the pride, right? That's how a good woman is, okay? It said, this Proverbs 31:15, she riseth like get up, she gets up also while it is yet night. So early in the morning, she's getting up early in the morning. A good woman gets up early in the morning and giveth meat to her husband or to her household, Salakia. Giveth meat to her household. So she wakes up and starts cooking, preparing a meal for her family, and a portion to her maidens. Okay? She considereth the field and buy it. With the fruit of her hand she planteth a vineyard. So a good woman will take her income and purchase some land so that she can grow crops. These ungodly, unlawful Western women rather spend their income on Louis Vuitton. They just had these 3 so-called blacks, 2 women, 1 male, spending over $500,000 at Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton banned these 3 so-called blacks from coming to the store spending money because they accused these so-called blacks of purchasing items with drug money. So the so-called blacks, the 2 women and the man wants to sue Louis Vuitton for the accusations that these 3 so-called blacks are drug dealers and spending drug money on Louis Vuitton. They got this type of income, and these women are not buying land. They're probably somewhere paying bills in some stupid condo or something with a $14,000 rent tag on it, right? Because this is what they're doing. The Western woman, she's wasteful with her income. Always at a restaurant. Always spending the income on, websites. Always blowing the money to go on vacations. Just wasteful. The children of these Western women don't have no generational wealth. If I had my children, I'd buy them silver and gold throughout the year and put it in a trust account. I'll establish a business for these children to operate. Teach them how to not work for people. Raise them up to be merchants. like the Ishmaelites are doing. The so-called Arabs have their children running these corner stores. So that's a good woman. Proverbs 31:17. She girdeth her loins with strength and strengthen her arms. Okay, so she's in shape. These Western women are obese. They're finished. They look like ugly ducklings with this weave. And bald edges. Keep putting that synthetic plastic against their real hair, losing all their edges, spending like $200 to $400 and more for a fake image. I don't even know how the police and law enforcement and the DMV allow these women to take photos with all of this fake up on. How do they even identify these women without all this fake up? These women can commit crimes the way they dress up like they celebrating Halloween all the time with all of this crap, destroying their natural image. So-called black women looked 100% better in slavery. I take a kizzy any day before I take one of these Western women that's destroyed their image and she's trying her hardest to blend in with white America so she can get a damn income working for ESPN or something. Or so she can be a reporter on the news, or so she can be a district attorney or something. Trying her hardest to blend in with white America. Okay? I'll take a woman from slavery. Give me a woman from chattel slavery. They looked 100% better during slavery. They wore dresses. That's how you know these women don't do the work. They don't work as hard as these women did historically. Like this Proverb 31 woman. There's no way this woman about to go out there in the vineyard with no jeans on and do all this work. Proverbs 31 and 17 or 18. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. See, she keep the spirit. She not burnt out by the night because she got the spirit. All these women over here are tired. They're lazy. They don't even know how to get dressed. Everything about these Western women is always like you got to tell these women to put some clothes on. If a man came out the house the way these women came out the house, he would have to have his chest out, and he'll have to have some biker shorts on, showing his print, showing all his goddamn creases, just to be like these so-called women in the West. They never want to get dressed. You know what they get dressed for? They get dressed for their lifestyles. They think they're at their best over here in the West when they're living the lifestyles of trafficking themselves or escorting themselves or promoting themselves in skimpy attire. That's when they think they're at their best, when they're showing off their shape. Everything is revealing. That's when they think they're at their best. When the sun hits them from behind and you can see her nakedness. This is what these Western women think is at when they're at their best. They'll shame modest apparel, right? Proverbs 31 and 20 or 19. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretches out her hand unto the poor, yea, she reached forth her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. Well, first of all, these women don't have households. Okay, they don't have a household with a husband and a family. So these households are destroyed. Their households are filthy. All they do is threaten the children and raise their voice at the children and holler at the children. Verbally abusing these children. These households have no structure and no leadership. Women love young children because the children depend on her and she feels like she's a leader over children. This is why the so-called black woman, Latino woman likes to have children, because she's the leader. She has a false position of leadership over children. Right? This is why they do what they do. So again, and I'm gonna end this soon. Leviticus 19 and 29. Do not prostitute thy daughters to cause her to be a whore, lest the land fall to whoredom and the land become full of wickedness. We know that's America. Hosea 4 and 11 through 13. Whoredom and wine. Wine is the philosophies. And new wine, which is new lifestyles, new philosophies, new doctrine. Whoredom and wine and new wine take away the heart, which is the mind. Your heart is the mind. The heart is the mind, is not the organ in the chest that pumps oxygen and blood to the rest of the body. The heart is the mind, according to the Bible. My people ask counsel at their stocks. Okay? Talking about the leaders. And their staff declareth unto them. Talking about these ungodly Negroes. For the spirit of whoredoms have caused them to err, and they have gone a whoring from under their God. See, the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians were not punished with slavery because our ancestors rejected the Savior, Yahweh Shai, or who the world ignorantly calls Jesus. It wasn't because we rejected our Savior. It was because we rejected the law. They sacrificed upon the tops of the mountains and burned incense upon the hills, under oaks and poplars and elms, right? Idols, because the shadow thereof is good. Therefore your daughters shall commit whoredom, and your spouses shall commit adultery. Adultery, which is leaving relationships over and over again. This is what the women are doing today. And they're shaming and using the and using the need to be right to justify why they keep jumping from man to man. That is adultery. If a man comes across a woman and all she says is how she left this relationship, she ended this relationship, she left that relationship, and she justifies it by saying, well, what was I supposed to do? Stick around while this man was trying to be controlling and blah, 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 blah. That is an adulteress. She will not spend the rest of her life with no man. She's going to go from man to man until she gets closer to the wall, until she gets closer to death. This is why you have women in their 20s and then women all the way up to their 80s still talking about dating, still talking about a soulmate. Just think about how many men these women have ran across and got ran through by as if they haven't met a good man yet. This is because these women are unfit and they can't live up to the standards of good men. Women make it to 50 and 60 and 70 years old still looking for a good man. Come on, man. They've met the man that's good before, and they couldn't live up to his standards. They didn't like that he put boundaries on them. They didn't like that a man was trying to change them and correct their behavior. Right? Ephesians 5 and 5 through 7. For this ye know that no whoremonger, which is men who sponsor lifestyles of dating and low-class prostitution and escorting, these will be your whoremongers. The women in the Bible that were prostituting themselves and trafficking their sex were the whores. The whoremongers are the men who purchase escorting or purchase sex. Nor unclean persons, which are the ones who don't keep the dietary laws. No shrimp, no crab, no shellfish. Those are the unclean persons. Nor covetous men. Men who are coveting another man's wife. Who is an idolater. Okay? Those of our people, so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians, who put God, another God before their own God, who puts Jesus as a God and the statue Jesus, the Caucasian Jesus, that is an idol. White Jesus is an idol. He's a false God. He's an idol. And so-called whites historically made statues to worship. All the heathens made statues. The Chinese made statues. The Africans made statues to worship. There's some African tribes who worship acorns. Okay? Little statues of wood and stuff like that, and stone. These are the heathens worshiping idols. Arabs did it too. Hath any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. So they're not going to inherit the kingdom. These idols and unclean persons and whores and whoremongers. 6, let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of God upon the children of disobedience. The unlawful woman, she's not going to inherit the kingdom. The ungodly woman will not inherit the kingdom. 7, be ye not therefore partakers with them. So again, I'm judgmental. I'm going to cast judgment. I'm going to cast righteous judgment. I'm going to show my people, the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians, their transgressions. And I represent the set apart so-called blacks, Latino and Native Indians, those that keep the law, statutes, and commandments of our God, the God of Israel, who's not everybody's God. He created everybody, but his people are the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians. That's why we are the only ones that are going through punishments and slaveries. Our God is not punishing anybody else the way in which he punishes us, his children. Okay, the other races have their own God that they worship. All their false gods. Their gods did not create heaven and earth. Okay, so judgment. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions, and the house of Jacob their sins. Okay? Because so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians were given the law. The other races do not make sacrifices and do not have a place of repentance because the law was not given to them. The Bible is the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans handbook and history book. Okay? So, with that said, I hope somebody was edified. Okay? I just wanted to touch on the lifestyles that women choose to live in the West. The men should find themselves either saving themselves from these lifestyles that women choose to live, because most of these women in the West, again, they use their sexuality to get what they want. And then they pretend like they don't desire a man's structure and leadership, right? They don't look at the men like the men are the leaders, and the men set the boundaries, right? For the women. For the woman, that's his wife, right? The Western lifestyle shames the men, insults the men that puts boundaries on his woman while she's in a relationship with him. They call it controlling. They call structure controlling. They call their duties slavery. And these women do not uphold the law, statutes, and commandments of marriage according to the Bible, right? So the West is trash. The lifestyles that these feminists push on the other women is trash. Women who destroy their own families and jump from man to man and choose to contract with the agencies in the West is trash, right? So I encourage the men to save themselves from these women, these unlawful women. Stop being perverts, men. Stop being whoremongers, men. Stop lusting over these unlawful women. They look easy, but you're going to be the one sponsoring the experience with these women. The godly woman is a Proverb 31 woman, okay? A lot of these men are going to find themselves catching some sort of STD that they can't get rid of dealing with these unlawful women just because you want to see what she, feels like, because she still looks desirable, okay, on the outside. Meanwhile, they got the gift that keeps on giving, okay? So hopefully this has been edifying. I wanted to have some type of etiquette while I explained what I was saying. You know what I'm saying? And, I just can't wait till this, European rulership comes to an end so that the ways of the world can shift. World War III is on the brinks. The draft should come back into place. The women should be drafted. The elemental P community should be a part of the draft. And these ungodly children of these women should be a part of the draft. You know what I'm saying? So-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians are finding themselves in the streets, gang banging. The households is jacked up. Their mothers are on programs. Their mothers can't afford these lifestyles of being a single mother. You know what I'm saying? The church ain't doing no good. White Jesus ain't doing nothing for nobody. He ain't never did nothing for nobody. All right? The door to grace is closing, okay? Because this is what everybody's pushing, grace. So-called white church is doing a good job as far as telling lies and deceiving the heathen nations into believing that the heathens can receive salvation and the laws of heaven are done away with. This is why Revelations say that, Satan deceiveth the world, okay? Because he's telling all the heathens that they can receive salvation, which is a lie. And he's also pushing that they don't have to keep the commandments in order to receive salvation. That's also not true, because the laws have not been done away with. But he's lying to them, saying that they can receive salvation. And the 2/3 are joined hand in hand with the heathens, because the 2/3 don't want to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments as well. So Esau, the so-called white man, is bringing together the heathens and the 2/3 and saying they can all receive salvation, which is a lie, and saying that keeping the law, statutes, and commandments is done away with, which is another lie. So he is the deceiver. He is the man of perdition. And he can talk that because Satan will only rule in hell. He's not going to rule in heaven. But this is the so-called white man's heaven at this time. All right. So with that said, I want to say Kwam Yasharala. Okay. We do have next. All right. And again, I want to thank all of my subscribers. I wish you and your loved ones are safe and in high health and taking the proper precautions against these agendas that are waged against us behind enemy lines here in America, aka Spiritual Babylon. This has been a Beak with another content, another edification. Like, share, subscribe. Shalom.